Hi, the topic of today's program is a very interesting topic called respiration. This is where we breathe in air through the human breathing mechanism to get the necessary oxygen for us to live. Now, everyone, breathe in, exhale. Again, breathe in. So as we breathe in, the oxygen has just entered our body. Exhale, carbon dioxide has just been expelled. So I'm sure you feel much better now, right? You feel fresh with a large dose of oxygen. Next, we will look in detail at the human breathing mechanism. We will examine the processes that occur during inhalation and exhalation. We will conduct an experiment to demonstrate the action of the human diaphragm on the breathing process. We will also learn that oxygen is required to oxidize food or glucose to release energy, carbon dioxide, and water. Therefore, it is important for us to understand how oxygen is transported in the human body and to realize the importance of maintaining a healthy lifestyle. How do you maintain a healthy respiratory system? We must ensure that the air that we breathe in is free of pollutants. There are many types of air pollution. Do you know that air pollution kills? There are various pollutants in the air that are harmful and can cause illnesses that affect the human respiratory system. Pollutants in the air can cause diseases and illnesses like lung emphysema, bronchitis, lung cancer, and even the common asthma. As we go on, we shall also discuss and look at ways at how to improve the quality of the air that we breathe in so that it is beneficial and not harmful to our health. Okay, let us now look at the human breathing mechanism. All living things need oxygen to live. We breathe in oxygen in the air and we breathe out carbon dioxide. Respiration allows oxygen to be drawn into the human body to be supplied to the cells and tissues to oxidize food or glucose to release the needed energy and the byproducts carbon dioxide and water. The human respiratory system consists of the nasal cavity, trachea, lungs, ribs, diaphragm, and the intercostal muscles. Air is breathed in through the nose, and air is warm, moistened, and filtered. It then passes through the trachea, which is a tube supported by rings of cartilage, which then branches into two separate bronchus, left and right, which enters the lungs. In the lungs, the bronchus branches to form many smaller channels called bronchioles. At the end of these bronchioles are tiny sacs clustered like grapes. These sacs are known as the alveoli and are packed throughout the lungs. Blood capillaries are wrapped around these alveoli, which has very thin walls because it is only a single cell thick. It is also moist and therefore allows efficient gas exchange to occur in our body. That is, it allows oxygen to diffuse to the tissues that need it and to remove the carbon dioxide from the tissues. Now let's look in detail at the breathing mechanism. The breathing mechanism involves inhaling and exhaling. As we breathe in or inhale, both the external intercostal muscles and the diaphragm contract, causing the rib cage to be raised and expanded. The diaphragm moves down and will flatten. This causes the thoracic cavity to become bigger and its volume increase. This means the air pressure within the lungs is lowered and air could then be forced into the lungs. On the other hand, air is breathed out during exhalation as the intercostal muscles and the diaphragm relax. This brings the rib cage down back to its normal position and the diaphragm to curve upwards. Therefore, the thoracic cavity becomes smaller and its volume decreases, raising the air pressure inside the lungs. Air is then forced out of the lungs. Inhaled air brings in oxygen to our body and exhaled air brings out the carbon dioxide.
Here, we require a plastic jar, a Y-shaped glass tube, rubber bands, some balloons, a thin rubber sheet, scissors, candle, cellophane tape, lighter, and masking tape. We first need to assemble all the apparatus together to build a functional model of the human respiratory system. To begin with, a balloon is tied to each Y-shaped end of the glass tube using rubber bands followed by the cellophane tape. We will then have the Y-shaped glass tube inserted through the hole from inside the plastic jar, thus attaching the Y-shaped glass tube to the plastic jar by dripping candle wax to seal it. Finally, a thin rubber sheet is tied to cover the open end of the plastic jar by using rubber bands and masking tape. The model now represents our respiratory system with the long stalk of the Y-shaped glass tube acting as the trachea, the Y-shaped ends acting as the bronchi, the two balloons as the lungs, and a thin rubber sheet that covers the plastic jar as the diaphragm. Now, as we pull the rubber sheet downwards, we could see that the balloons bloat. This indicates that our lungs are filled with air as we inhale and our diaphragm contracts and moves down. However, if we push the rubber sheet upwards, the balloons will shrink, indicating that air has left the lungs. This happens as we exhale and our diaphragm relaxes and moves upwards. Now, let's revise and look at the similarities of this experiment with the visuals of inhalation and exhalation in a human being.
As we understand the concept of the respiratory system, from the lungs, oxygen in the inhaled air must be transported throughout the body. Every cell requires oxygen to live, and in turn, carbon dioxide must be carried away. The blood circulatory system enables the transport of oxygen to our body tissues and the elimination of carbon dioxide from them. Air that reaches the alveoli in our lungs is rich in oxygen. It will then dissolve in the moist lining of the alveoli, which are very thin, 1 cell thick. This allows for rapid diffusion of oxygen in the blood capillaries. In the blood, oxygen is transported to all parts of the body in the form of oxyhemoglobin. Oxyhemoglobin is formed when oxygen combines with the hemoglobin in the red blood cell. The blood that leaves the lungs is then highly concentrated in oxygen and is therefore known as oxygenated blood. From the lungs, oxygenated blood is brought to the heart, which then pumps the blood to the rest of our body. As the oxygenated blood reaches body tissues or cells with a low concentration of oxygen, the oxyhemoglobin will break down and oxygen will be released. Diffusion of oxygen takes place from an area of higher concentration to an area of lower concentration of oxygen in the cell tissues. At the same time, carbon dioxide from the cells will diffuse into the blood capillaries and is carried back to the lungs for gas exchange to occur. Then, the deoxygenated blood that enters the lungs will then be oxygenated again. As we breathe in, we take in oxygen and other substances such as nitrogen and a very small percentage of carbon dioxide. However, we are all aware that the air that we breathe in is polluted and might also contain other substances that could be harmful to our respiratory system. Air pollution is due to the release of pollutants by motor vehicles, cigarette smoking, open burning, and also industrial waste products such as asbestos dust and coal dust. These pollutants contain harmful substances, bacteria or viruses, and other microorganisms that could affect the respiratory system and cause various diseases ranging from simple breathing difficulties to cancer. The release of carbon monoxide from vehicles and cigarette smoke, for example, could cause suffocation and poisoning as carbon monoxide reduces the amount of oxygen in the blood. Polluted air can also contain influenza-causing viruses that could lead to pneumonia. One could also get lung emphysema, bronchitis, or even heart disease on exposure to cigarette smoke. Nicotine in cigarettes cause addiction, but many of the chemical substances in it, like tar, causes lung cancer. These substances, which include hydrocarbons from industrial waste, are known as carcinogens. In addition to those, industrial waste and open burning add up to pollution by releasing nitrogen oxide, sulfur dioxide, as well as dust particles which can cause haze. Haze in turn causes inflammation of the respiratory tract and result in breathing difficulties and asthma. Dirty and polluted air has resulted in a great amount of respiratory illnesses. So we need to maintain the purity of the air we breathe in to have a healthy respiratory system. In order to improve the quality of the air, we must first educate the public on the importance of clean air and how it benefits our respiratory system. By raising public awareness and conducting health campaigns, such as anti-smoking campaigns, we could also urge the public to either reduce or quit smoking. We should carry out strict enforcement of the law against those who contribute to air pollution, such as fining those who conduct open burning and fining industries that emit excessive smoke and fumes. All factories with chimneys should install electrostatic precipitators to remove pollutants. We should encourage the use of unleaded petrol, which would be able to reduce the amount of toxic fumes emitted by vehicles. All heavy vehicles, such as lorries and buses, should be fitted with catalytic converters to reduce the release of dangerous gases such as carbon monoxide. Much more effort can be done to ensure that the quality of air is improved, and when the air is clean, our respiratory system will also be healthy. Okay, let us recall what we have learned so far. Number 1. The human respiratory system consists of the nasal cavity, trachea, lungs, ribs, diaphragm, and the intercostal muscles. Number 2. The lungs consist of the bronchus, bronchiole, and alveolus, which are wrapped with blood capillaries. Number 3. The breathing mechanism consists of inhalation and exhalation of air. Remember the experiment with the bell jar that demonstrates the action of the rubber sheet, which acts as a diaphragm on the balloons, which represent the lungs. That experiment showed the process of inhalation and exhalation. Number 4. Oxygen is taken in and transported by the red blood cells in the form of oxyhemoglobin throughout the body. The blood, which is rich in oxygen, is called oxygenated blood. Then, oxygen is diffused from the blood capillaries into the cell tissues, while carbon dioxide is diffused into the blood capillaries to be transported back to the lungs to be expelled. The deoxygenated blood is then oxygenated again and goes to the heart to be pumped back to the tissues. Number 5. We have to take care of our respiratory system because the air that we breathe in may contain chemical substances that are harmful, such as nicotine, tar, and carbon monoxide from cigarette smoke. We also learned that smoking is the primary cause of lung cancer because cigarette smoke contains a lot of carcinogens. Other pollutants include sulfur dioxide, nitrogen dioxide, asbestos dust, coal dust, and hydrocarbons in emission from factories and vehicles. Microorganisms in the air, such as bacteria and viruses, also cause illnesses and diseases. Finally, we may conclude that we need to prevent air pollution by strict enforcement of environmental laws and regulations and utilizing air pollution control equipment to improve the quality of the air that we breathe in. Besides having laws and regulations, how do we help or contribute towards protecting the quality of the air that we breathe in? It all begins with our actions. We must practice good habits and refrain from polluting the air that we breathe in our daily routine. Together, we can make a positive difference in maintaining the quality of the air that we breathe in.